Greetings, this is Brother Eli with another episode of Bible Truth Revealed. Today's teaching is entitled, How to Find a Virtuous Woman. That is, how to find a virtuous woman. We live in a time when many people think that the Proverbs 31 woman is simply a myth. In other words, that she never truly existed. This is because she achieved so many great things that she seems like superwoman compared to most women today. When some women read the achievements of the virtuous woman in Proverbs chapter 31, they conclude that it is a standard that they will never be able to meet. This often leads to feelings of doubt and insecurity in those who are good wives or seek to become great wives. On the other hand, a minority of women sees a Proverbs 31 woman as an ideal that is worth striving for, because even if they never achieve the same feats, they can become better wives just by following her example. At the same time, many men are so convinced that it is impossible to find a virtuous woman that they don't even bother to look. This teaching, which is for men who wish to find virtuous wives, and for women who wish to become virtuous wives, will seek to answer the following questions. 1. What is a virtuous woman? 2. Why do men need virtuous women? 3. What are the qualities of a virtuous woman? And 4. How can a man find a virtuous woman? Question 1. What is a virtuous woman? Proverbs chapter 31 verse 10. I will be reading Proverbs 31 verse 10, and I will be using the Brenton Septuagint translation. It reads thus: Who shall find a virtuous woman? For such a one is more valuable than precious stones. So we find that a virtuous woman has value that's much higher than precious stones, whether they be rubies or emeralds. Whatever those precious stones may be, a virtuous woman is worth more than that. Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach in the Apocrypha, chapter 7 verse 19. Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach, chapter 7 verse 19 says, Forego not a wise and good woman, for her grace is above gold. That means when you find yourself a wise and good woman, don't let her go. Forego her not. You need to make that woman your own if you are a man that is looking for a wife, because her grace is above gold. This is very similar to Proverbs chapter 31 verse 10, because they are talking about the same thing. A virtuous woman is a good woman. Her value is higher than that of precious stones. It is more than that of gold. So that is the answer. A virtuous woman is simply a good woman. Proverbs chapter 12 verse 4. Proverbs chapter 12 verse 4 says this: A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, but as a worm in wood, so a bad woman destroys her husband. So this is a contrast between a virtuous woman and a bad woman. And the reason they are contrasted is because they are opposites. The opposite of a virtuous woman is a bad woman. The opposite of a bad woman is a virtuous woman, and that's because a virtuous woman is simply a good woman. So in Proverbs chapter 31 verse 10, when it says, "Who shall find a virtuous woman?" all it's asking is, who shall find a good woman? A virtuous woman is a good woman, and they are hard to find. Question number 2. Why do men need virtuous women? Why do men need virtuous women? Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach in the Apocrypha, chapter 26. I'll be reading verses 1 to 3 and verses 14 to 16. That's Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach, chapter 26, verses 1 to 3 and verses 14 to 16. It says, "Blessed is the man that hath a virtuous wife, for the number of his days shall double." When you have a virtuous wife, a good wife, you live longer because she looks after you. She does not stress you out and send you to an early grave. She makes sure that you eat well, that you are looked after. And because your health improves with a virtuous wife, you shall see double your days. Verse 2. "A virtuous woman rejoiceth her husband, so she makes him happy, and he shall fulfill the years of his life in peace." A man that has a wife that makes him happy is a man that naturally lives longer. He is healthier because he is not being destroyed by stress. Verse 3. "A good wife is a good portion." The reason why it is interchangeably using virtuous wife with good wife is because the word virtuous simply means good. A virtuous woman is simply a good woman. Verse 3 again, "A good wife is a good portion, which shall be given in the portion of them that fear the Lord." So if you are a man that wants a virtuous or good wife, make sure you fear the Lord in order to receive this good portion. Verse 14. "A silent and loving woman is a gift of the Lord, and there is nothing so much worth as a mind well instructed." A virtuous or good woman is a silent and loving woman. She's not ratchet. She's not in your face. She doesn't challenge everything that you say. A silent and loving woman is a gift of the Lord. This is the portion of them that fear the Lord. And there's nothing so much worth as a mind well instructed. When a woman's mind is well instructed, she knows the importance of silence. She knows the importance of being loving. And what she instructed in? She is instructed in the laws of the Most High God. Verse 15. "A shamefaced and faithful woman is a double grace, and her continent mind cannot be valued." It's saying the same thing. She's shamefaced. She's not up in your face. She's faithful. She's loyal. She looks after her husband. She loves him. She's devoted to him. She is a double grace. She is worth more than gold, more than precious stone. Her continent mind is her well-trained or well-instructed mind. She is instructed in the law, and that's why her mind cannot be valued. There are many beautiful women, meaning beautiful to look at, but if their mind is not instructed in the laws of the Most High God, they are not virtuous women. These women are not going to make virtuous wives. They don't qualify. What matters is the instruction of her mind. There is nothing so much worth as a mind well instructed. Her continent mind cannot be valued. It is priceless. Verse 16. As the sun when it arises in the high heaven, so is the beauty of a good wife. This is a virtuous wife in the ordering of her house. So we've just seen again that a good wife is a virtuous wife. A virtuous wife is a good wife. And she is exceptional when it comes to the ordering of her house. So a man needs a virtuous woman in his life because she makes him happy. She extends his life because she reduces his stress. She's silent and loving. She's supportive. And she has a mind that's well instructed in the laws of the Most High God. So she is exceptional in ordering her house. Proverbs chapter 31, verses 11 to 12. That's Proverbs chapter 31, verses 11 to 12. And it reads thus. The heart of her husband trusts in her. Why? Because she is trustworthy. She is a faithful woman. Such a one shall stand in no need of fine spoils, which means that he will lack nothing. She is not a gold digger who is just going to come into his life and take his stuff. She is not going to divorce him and walk away with his wealth. He trusts her. He doesn't have to worry about being spoiled. He has what he needs, and it is in good hands because she did not come to take it away. She came to add to it. Verse 12. For she employs all her living for her husband's good. Not some of her living, not a bit of her living, but all her living for her husband's good. She does that which makes her husband happy. She does that which is for her husband's good. This is what makes her a good or virtuous woman. The fact that the virtuous woman is expected to employ all her living for her husband's good is a warning to women to be very careful whom they choose to get married to. If the virtuous woman is married to a righteous man, she has nothing to fear because he will not take advantage of her goodness and he would not take her for granted. But if she chooses to marry a wicked man, that man can destroy her. It is extremely difficult for a virtuous woman to be the best that she could be if she's married to an unrighteous or wicked man. So be very careful whom you choose to say yes to. Now that we know why men need virtuous women, let's move to question number 3. What are the qualities of a virtuous woman? Proverbs chapter 31. We'll continue reading from verse 13. That's Proverbs chapter 31, verse 13 onwards. It says, gathering wool and flax, she makes it serviceable with her hands. So she loves to work. She's a hard worker. Verse 14, she is like a ship trading from a distance. So she procures her livelihood. So she goes to wherever she needs to get the best for her family. Just like a ship, she travels to far distances. She gets her livelihood and she brings it back home. Verse 15, and she rises by night and gives food to her household. She makes sure that everybody in her house is well fed, and appointed tasks to her maidens. She decides what needs to be done, and she appoints or delegates the work to her maidens, her maid servants. The reason why the Proverbs 31 woman was able to achieve so much is because she had servants to help her. So those women who feel insecure when they read Proverbs 31, they do not need to feel insecure. She had servants. You probably don't. Therefore, do the best that you can to be a good wife to your husband. Use Proverbs 31 to give you ideas as to what you can do to be a good wife. But it was never intended to make you feel as though this is something you can never achieve. Because if you had servants, so you could appoint tasks to your maidens, you certainly would be able to achieve the same feats of the Proverbs 31 woman. Verse 16. She views a farm and buys it, and with the fruit of her hands she plants a possession. So we're seeing she's a hard-working woman. That's what we can take from this. A virtuous woman is a hard-working woman. You don't need to achieve everything that the Proverbs 31 woman achieved, but you have to be a hard-working woman. Work to the best of your ability. Do the best that you can do, and be a good wife to your husband. Verse 17. She strongly girds her loins and strengthens her arms for work. So she prepares herself to work hard. Verse 18. And she finds by experience that working is good. There are many lazy women nowadays who do not want to work, who do not like to work. They treat working as though it's a bad thing. But good women understand that working is good. They are hard-working women. This is one of the qualities of a virtuous woman. She's a hard worker. It continues, and her candle goes not out all night. She would work throughout the night if need be. Verse 19, she reaches forth her arms to needful works. So she notices what needs to be done. She reaches forth her arms and she does those things and applies her hands to the spindle. So she knows how to sew. And she opens her hands to the needy. This means she's charitable and reaches out fruit to the poor. So a virtuous woman, which is a good woman, is one, hardworking, and two, charitable. Verse 21. Her husband is not anxious about those at home when he tarries anywhere abroad. So he can travel and his mind is clear. He is not worrying about anybody at home because he knows that he left the home in the hands of a virtuous woman, a good woman, a hard-working woman who is responsible. For all her household are clothed. She makes sure that everyone is well fed and well clothed. This is a good woman. Verse 22. She makes for her husband clothes of double texture and garments for herself of fine linen and scarlet. So she makes sure that she and her husband are dressed in the very best that they can afford. And she makes them herself. Not every woman knows how to make clothing. It's something to aim for, but even if you don't know, whilst you are learning, you can still purchase the best for yourself and for your husband and for your children. Make sure that your family looks presentable. That is a mark of a virtuous woman. Verse 23. And her husband becomes a distinguished person in the gates when he sits in council with the old inhabitants of the land. Verse 24. She makes fine linens and sells girdles to the Canaanites. She opens her mouth heedfully. That means carefully. And with propriety. That means she speaks things that are suitable or appropriate and controls her tongue. The Canaanites were the enemies to the Israelites. This virtuous Israelite woman sold girdles to the Canaanites. She was able to profit from her enemies. She opened her mouth heedfully or with care among her enemies, and with propriety she said things that were proper, suitable, socially acceptable. She conformed to the norms of right behavior and controlled her tongue. I'm sure there are things that she wanted to say to the Canaanites, but she was wise. She understood the importance of watching her words, and as a result, she was able to profit from her enemies. This is something that many Israelite women can learn today. They like to curse out their enemies when instead they should be opening their mouth heedfully and with propriety and controlling their tongue whilst they profit from their enemies. You cannot profit from someone whilst cursing them out. A virtuous woman understands the importance of watching what she says, because she understands that life and death are in the power of the tongue. Let's find that in Proverbs chapter 18, verses 21 to 22. That's Proverbs chapter 18, verses 21 to 22, and it reads thus: Life and death are in the power of the tongue, and they that rule it shall eat the fruits thereof. So they that rule their tongue shall benefit from the fruits, the positive things that come as a result of 1, saying positive words, and 2, not speaking negativity. Now let's look at the context in which this statement, life and death are in the power of the tongue, was made. Verse 22, he that has found a good wife has found favors. The subject has not changed. We're still talking about a good wife, a virtuous wife. She knows how to control her tongue. Again, he that has found a good wife has found favors and has received gladness from God, because a virtuous wife is a gift from the Most High God. It continues, he that puts away a good wife puts away a good thing, because there are some fools who have good wives but do not recognize what they have. So they take their wives for granted. And when these women do not go along with their foolishness, they put them away. He that puts away a good wife, which is so hard to find, puts away a good thing, which shows that he is a fool. It continues, and he that keeps an adulteress is foolish and ungodly. There are men whose wives commit adultery, sleep with other men, but these men hold on to these women for whatever reason. Oh, she's so beautiful, she's so nice, but she's not a good woman. If she was a good woman, she would not be an adulteress. So we know that a virtuous wife is faithful. She's loyal. She does everything for her husband's good. If you have a wife who is an adulteress, put her away. If you keep an adulteress, it's evidence that you are foolish and ungodly. Let's go back to Proverbs chapter 31, and I will read verses 25 to 31. That's Proverbs chapter 31, verses 25 to 31, and it says, she puts on strength and honor and rejoices in the last days. The ways of her household are careful. So she's careful to look after the people in her home. And she eats not the bread of idleness. She doesn't totter around doing nothing in particular. She always finds things that are needful. She finds things that need to be done and she does them because she understands by experience that working is good. Some people behave as though working is a curse. Working is a blessing. It is a good thing. Verse 27, but she opens her mouth wisely. She opens her mouth with wisdom and according to the law. The law. The law. All those Christian women that reject the law and claim to be virtuous women, they have just fallen at this hurdle. You cannot reject the law and be a virtuous woman. A virtuous woman's mind is well instructed in the law. She has a continent mind that cannot be valued. If you are lawless, you are not virtuous. So repent while there's still time. Embrace the law of the Most High God and become a truly virtuous woman. Verse 28. And her kindness to them sets up her children for them, and they grow rich, and her husband praises her. Her kindness to whom? We read earlier that she sells girdles to the Canaanites, her enemies. She's wise amongst her enemies. She controls her tongue amongst her enemies. She's kind to her enemies. Why? They're her customers. You're supposed to be kind to your customers. Her kindness to them sets up her children for them. Why? So that when she passes or she's too old to continue her business, her children will be able to continue to sell to the Canaanites, to her enemies, and they grow rich. We are in captivity. Our enemies are growing rich off us. A virtuous woman turns that on its head and she grows rich. Her children grow rich off her enemies because she is a wise woman. She employs the law of the Most High God in order to provide for her family. She's kind to everyone. She doesn't feel the need to curse out people because they are not her people. Instead, she profits from them by providing the best products to them and offering exceptional customer service. This is a quality of the virtuous woman. And her husband praises her because of her wisdom. Verse 29. Many daughters have obtained wealth. Many have wrought valiantly. But thou hast exceeded. Thou hast surpassed all. What's the difference between the virtuous woman and those other daughters that have obtained wealth and been valiant or brave? How is it that she has exceeded and surpassed them all? It's because her mind has been instructed in the law of the Most High. The law is what teaches us wisdom. The law is what allows the virtuous woman to exceed and surpass the other women that are around her. Verse 30. Charms are false, and woman's beauty is vain. Why? It's going to pass. Time and gravity will take its toll. So when a man is looking for a wife, he can't afford to focus on how charming she is. He can't afford to focus on how physically beautiful she is. It continues, for it is a wise woman that is blessed. Wisdom is the principal thing. Above charm and physical beauty is wisdom. Wisdom that is based on the law of the Most High God. A virtuous woman is righteous. She does what is right in the sight of the Most High because she understands the law of the Most High. When looking for a virtuous woman, you must look for a wise woman. It continues, and let her praise the fear of the Lord. Give her of the fruit of her lips. What is this talking about? We read earlier in Proverbs chapter 18 verse 21, life and death are in the power of the tongue, and they that rule it shall eat the fruits thereof. Now we're reading, give her of the fruit of her lips. The fruit is talking about the result, the product of her lips. The things that she say will come back to her. If she's been cursing out the Canaanites, if she's been cursing out the enemies around her, they're not going to want to do business with her. Her business is going to close down. She's going to lose customers. But if she's wise with them, if she controls her tongue with them, if she speaks positive words and gives the best customer service, her business will grow. She will reap the reward of the words that left her lips. Give her the fruit of her lips, and let her husband be praised in the gates. So the qualities of a virtuous woman are: 1, she's hardworking. 2, she's charitable. 3, she's kind and caring. 4, she's supportive of her husband. 5, she controls her tongue. And 6, she's wise, well instructed in the law of the Most High. Question number 4. How can a man find a virtuous woman? Firstly, we can immediately eliminate most women by their looks. You can take one look at most women and tell that they are not virtuous women. They disqualify themselves by the way they present themselves. Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach in the Apocrypha, chapter 26 verse 9. So Sirach 26 verse 9 says this: the whoredom of a woman may be known in her haughty looks and eyelids. So this is the opposite of a woman that's shamefaced. You can look at most women and tell if they are whores by their haughty looks and eyelids. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines the word haughty as blatantly and disdainfully proud, having or showing an attitude of superiority and contempt for people or things perceived to be inferior. So if a woman is prideful and she's looking down on people, you can tell that she is the opposite of a virtuous woman. A virtuous woman is a woman who does not look down on the Canaanites. She does not look down on her enemies, but rather is able to serve her enemies in a way that allows her to become rich from them. She prospers, and her children become rich because she passes on the business to them. A haughty woman is unable to do that because she is prideful. She thinks of herself as superior. She has contempt for other people and looks down on them. So haughty women are immediately disqualified when searching for a virtuous woman. We can learn how to find virtuous women by examining how Boaz found Ruth. That's Ruth chapter 2, and I'll be reading verses 1 to 5. Ruth chapter 2, verses 1 to 5 reads thus: And Naomi had a friend, an acquaintance of her husband, and the man was a mighty man of the kindred of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. So Boaz was a mighty Israelite man. Verse 2. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, "Let me go now to the field, and I will glean among the ears behind the man with whomsoever I shall find favor." And she said to her, "Go, daughter." So notice, Ruth is eager to work. She said, "Let me go now to the field and I will glean." She didn't say, "Let me stay home and receive benefits." She didn't say, "Let me go and find a man who's going to look after me so I will never have to work again." Rather, she said, "Let me go to the field." She wants to work. She understands by experience that working is good. She's a hard-working woman. Verse 3, "And she went and came and gleaned in the field behind the reapers, and she happened by chance to come on a portion of the land of Boaz, of the kindred of Elimelech." Most virtuous women are discovered by chance. It's when you least expect to meet a virtuous woman that you will meet a virtuous woman. So the key as a man is to understand the qualities of a virtuous woman so that when by chance you spot one, you will know what to do. If you don't know what you're looking for, how do you expect to find it? Verse 4, "And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, 'The Lord be with you.' And they said to him, 'The Lord bless you.' And Boaz said to his servant who was over the reapers, 'Whose is this damsel?'" So Boaz noticed something immediately, and he asked the question, "Whose is this damsel?" Notice he did not say, "Who is this damsel?" He wasn't asking for her identity. He said, "Whose is this damsel?" If I say, "Whose is this pencil?" I'm asking, who does this pencil belong to? So he asked the question, who does this damsel or young lady belong to? Whose is this damsel? Let's see that in Ecclesiasticus or Sirach in the Apocrypha, chapter 36, verse 24. That's Sirach, chapter 36, verse 24. It says, "He that getteth a wife beginneth a possession." A possession is something that you possess. It belongs to you. So when a man gets a wife, he begins a possession. That's the reason that a bride price was paid in ancient Israel and is still paid in some cultures today, because the man is literally purchasing the woman from her father. He gets her and begins his possession with her because she now belongs to him. It continues, "A help like unto himself." That's the reason the man purchases the woman. That's the reason he begins that possession to get a help like unto himself. This is why the Most High said, when he created Adam, it is not good for the man to be alone. The woman is a help for the man and a pillar of rest. Meaning, when a man has a good woman, a good wife, he can rest because he knows that he has a virtuous woman. Ruth chapter 2, I will continue from verse 6. Ruth chapter 2, verse 6 says, "And his servant who was set over the reapers answered and said, It is a Moabitish damsel who returned with Naomi out of the land of Moab." Verse 7, "And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers. And she came and stood from morning till evening, and rested not even a little in the field." This is a woman who wants to work, who understands by experience that working is good. Ruth was a hard-working woman. She worked from morning till evening, and she rested not even a little in the field. She did not take a break. She stood out among other women because she was a hard-working woman. Verse 8. And Boaz said to Ruth, Hast thou not heard, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, and depart not thou thence. Join thyself here with my damsels. When he heard what a hard-working woman she was, he recognized immediately this is one of the qualities of a virtuous woman. He said to her, Don't go working for anybody else. Stay here and continue to work for me. Boaz was a very wise man. He recognized instantly that he was faced with a virtuous woman. Verse 9, Let thine eyes be on the field where my men shall reap, and thou shalt go after them. So look and see where my men are reaping. Follow them. Don't follow anybody else. Behold, I have charged the young men not to touch thee. And when thou shalt thirst, then thou shalt go to the vessels, and drink of that which the young men shall have drawn. So Boaz recognized that Ruth was a hard-working woman. He recognized that that's one of the qualities of a virtuous woman, and he wanted to keep her close to him. Ruth chapter 2 verse 11. Ruth chapter 2 verse 11 says, And Boaz answered and said to her, It has fully been told me how thou hast dealt with thy mother-in-law after the death of thy husband, and how thou didst leave thy father and thy mother and the land of thy birth, and camest to a people whom thou knewest not before. So Boaz had inquired about Ruth, and it was fully told to him what kind of woman she was. This is how he knew that he was dealing with a virtuous or good woman. As a man, when you meet a woman that you suspect might be a virtuous woman because she has some of the qualities of the virtuous woman, it is up to you to do your due diligence. Ask about her. Gather information so you can know for sure if you are dealing with a virtuous woman. Ruth chapter 3, I will read verses 7 to 11 and verses 16 to 18. That's Ruth chapter 3, verses 7 to 11 and verses 16 to 18. It says, And Boaz ate and drank, and his heart was glad. And he came to lie down by the side of the heap of corn. And she came secretly. So that's Ruth. She came secretly and lifted up the covering of his feet. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was amazed and troubled. And behold, a woman lay at his feet. And he said, Who art thou? And she said, I am thine handmaid, Ruth. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near relation. In other words, she's asking for his covering. She's asking for his protection. She's asking him to look after her. This is another way of saying, I want you to be my husband. The woman doesn't always have to wait for the man to approach her. Remember, we read in chapter 2 that Boaz was a great man. He had the ability to protect Ruth and to provide for Ruth. So she now is saying to him, Cover me. Spread your skirt over me, for you are a near relation. You have the right to be my husband. Verse 10. And Boaz said, Blessed be thou of the Lord God, my daughter, for thou hast made thy latter kindness greater than the former, in that thou followest not after young men, whether any be poor or rich. So Boaz, being an older man, recognized that Ruth could have chosen a young man to say, "Spread your skirt over me," but she came to him. And this should be an encouragement to those elderly men in Israel, those who are not very young, that they too can find a virtuous woman, a virtuous wife. A virtuous woman is not going to rule you out because you are older. If you have the ability to provide for her and protect her, just like Boaz had for Ruth, there is no reason for you to rule yourself out of being a husband to a virtuous woman. Verse 11. And now fear not, my daughter. Whatever thou shalt say, I will do to thee. For all the tribe of my people knows that thou art a virtuous woman. It was not a secret that Ruth was a virtuous woman. Everybody knew that she was a virtuous woman because of people understood the qualities of a virtuous woman, and they were able to identify that she had these qualities. So again, the key to finding a virtuous woman is to learn and understand the qualities of a virtuous woman, so that when you meet one by chance, you recognize that she's a virtuous woman, and you can take the steps that are necessary to make her your wife. Ruth chapter 4 verse 13. Ruth chapter 4 verse 13 says, And Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. So Boaz understood the qualities of a virtuous woman. When he met this woman who was clearly working very hard in his field, he asked not, "Who is this damsel?" but rather, "Whose is this damsel? Who does this damsel belong to?" He recognized that she was a virtuous woman, and he asked the right question immediately. Who does she belong to? And he was fully informed about her qualities. This confirmed that she was definitely a virtuous woman. This is why when she came to him and asked for his covering, he did not hesitate to say, "All my people know that you are a virtuous woman." And he took the steps necessary to make her his wife. That is how you find a virtuous woman. In conclusion, a virtuous woman is simply a good woman. She is a woman who has been well instructed in the law of the Most High. That is why she is so wise and loving. She is modest, kind-hearted. She is great at ordering her house, and everyone that knows her can see that she is blessed. She's a good woman. If you are a woman, I encourage you to do your best to be a virtuous or good woman. Learn the laws of the Most High and follow them to the best of your ability, so that you can be one of those women that is so hard to find. And if you are a man, I can assure you that virtuous women exist. They are not a myth. I know that for a fact because I married one. And with that, I say, Shalom.